It's been a few months since Ninja Gaiden 4 dropped, and my timeline's finally clear of all the suck to vacuum posting. I would have chimed in earlier, but I'm currently involved in a new get-rich-quick scheme.
Mother, that's called a job!
First, let me make my disclosures. No, I didn't watch this video. No, I didn't watch that video. I think the dust finally settled over this tweet, so I don't think it's worth going over any further besides saying that this was the best read of the situation. If you're asking, all my gameplay is on normal. I don't pretend to be an expert on Ninja Gaiden by any means. Sigma 2 gaslit me into thinking that enemy encounters were 4-1 instead of 20-1 like they are in Vanilla 2, which led me to say dumb things in my Devil's Third and Wanted Dead videos. This is still a bad game though. I don't care what you say in the comments. I'm coming at NG4 from the angle of a Platinum fan. This is the most interesting title they've made in a long while. Instead of building something from the ground up, like they usually do with their more well-known material, Platinum has to adopt the sensibilities of another action game studio. This results in a show of restraint I haven't seen in Platinum since Nier Automata, and even then, they had some leeway with regard to set pieces to indulge their fancies. The lengthy shmup segments, the hype and aura moments. Don't get me wrong, NG4 has hype moments, but you're not getting a kaiju fight or rhythm game for the sake of spectacle like you would in Bayonetta. All those gimmicky bits you normally find in Platinum's work are largely absent in Ninja Gaiden 4. My guess is they didn't want to detract from the combat-first design philosophy that Itagaki and Team Ninja imbued in the series. Now, Platinum can't just ignore that part of the team that's all about the gimmicks, or they'll explode and take the company building with them, so they managed to find an outlet in the game's platforming. Instead of running down a series of hallways in between combat sections like other action games, you're running along walls, and swinging on grapple points, and grinding on rails, and surfing on water, and gliding over jet streams in NG4. Like, a lot. Holy shit, some chapters feel padded out with how much platforming you gotta do to progress. If I'm being mean, imagine Sonic Unleashed night sections interspersed with day sections within a single level. In fairness to Platinum, Ninja Gaiden 3 introduced gimmicky segments between fights, like mashing the triggers to climb up walls, or dodging missiles while in freefall. It's also the first game in a series to introduce stealth kill opportunities, so you can't pin a stealth kill mechanic in NG4 as a Metal Gear Rising influence. That's actually responsible for another mechanic. It's crazy how it took a game series that Platinum didn't create to make me realize what all their games boil down to. Every Platinum game is about meters. And before you go, every action game has a health meter, idiot, let me clarify. Barring edge cases like Automata, virtually every 3D Platinum game requires you to engage with a mechanic that has a finite resource expressed as a meter. Blade Mode, Wonderliner, Legion Power, Demon Slave, Augmented Reflex. All meters. You can trace this back to when they were originally Clover Studio with Beautiful Joe and Okami. Hell, I'll even argue that Witch Time counts, as it requires you to capitalize on enemy aggression as a resource with a fixed, i.e. finite, time limit. NG4 continues the tradition with Yakumo's Bloodraven style and Ryu's Gleam form. Each attack has a normal version and a Bloodraven or Gleam version, effectively doubling the moveset for both characters. Thing is, you have to rely on these mode shifts, because the enemies in NG4 like to turtle up and go into their own unblockable attacks. Hitting an enemy while shifted will break their guard, interrupt their red attacks, and soften them up for decapitations, which lead to insta-kill obliterations. One of the complaints about the Sigma versions of Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 is that the lower enemy count caused the team to inflate their health pools, making them damage sponges and lowering the chances of decaps and OBs that could happen in a fight. Platinum's mode shifts have somehow found a way to reconcile the damage sponge enemies of the Sigma versions with the copious amounts of decaps from Vanilla 2. Does it work? Sorta. My problem with this game is that I don't like how meter consumption works. Pressing any attack while shifted consumes a large portion of the meter. Now, you'll get meter back from attacking enemies and doing OBs, but you don't get it back from collecting Blood Essence. In fact, Blood Essence doesn't have any other purpose besides instantly charging up your weapons. No blue essence for partial health refills, and no red essence to restock Ninpo charges, but we'll touch on Ninpo later. Minor correction. Turns out that blood essence does restore some health like the blue essence of past games, but in practice, I never really noticed it, because the amount restored was negligible compared to the damage sustained from subsequent enemy attacks. If you really want to gain health back through combat consistently, equip the accessory that replenishes health after every OB, effectively turning them into glory kills. Personally, I think Blood Essence should refill your meter, just a little bit. Not as much as it would cost for a single attack input, but enough so that being efficient with your parries keeps you from bottoming out. Because with how the game works now, you'll attack enemies a turtle up and strike back if you keep pressing on, and the only way to break their guard and maintain pressure is to tap into your meter. But if you're burnt out and the enemy is about to hit you with a red attack, there's not much you can do besides dodging or breaking contact to avoid damage. That is, until you unlock Guillotine Throw and realize just how broken it is. I love and hate how GT works in this game. Guillotine Throw was always a good move because it cleared an enemy off the board temporarily, but you had to be mindful of your positioning or else you'll whiff the attack. That just doesn't happen in NG4. On the plus side, you can stitch together attack strings in a way you couldn't do in past titles. The game's even nice enough to home in on nearby enemies, so you can throw an enemy at another enemy that's about to pull off a red attack to interrupt them. And with how enemy collision works in this game, you can juggle an enemy you've just thrown at another enemy because they'll hang in midair after bumping into each other. But the side effect of GT being such a free attack is that you can throw it out without fear of retaliation for the most part, and this can lead to flowcharting your attacks. Is the enemy turtling up? Are you out of meter? Well, Guillotine Throw. And you can do it in midair now, which, honestly, kinda based. There's never not a reason to use GT when you're in a crowd, because the law of averages dictates that you'll catch one of them in the throw, if not all of them in succession. Platinum is fully aware of how broken GT is, because late game enemies can literally shrug off the attempt if you don't soften them up first with another attack. So if an enemy is blocking your attack, and you're out of meter, and they're denying your throws, what do? Oh, just footstool. This interrupts whatever they were going to do anyways. Besides these quirks, there's an embarrassment of riches in NG4 when it comes to defensive options. I recommend going into training mode and reading up on the differences between blocks and parries. You press on all the block button to block attacks, but you press an attack button when an enemy attack is about to touch you to parry that attack. Simple enough, right? Well, not only are there perfect variants of blocking and parrying, but both actions have follow-up attacks that also have perfect variants, and there's also perfect dodging, which has its own set of follow-ups. And there's a thing called a backlash parry, which is different from what happens when you follow up on a perfect parry. Remember when I said that Platinum game design was all about meters? What if I told you there was another meter that was in play? Yakumo and Ryu have a secondary meter that fills up as you give and take damage during combat. When it's full, you click in both sticks to trigger their respective installs. While you're in those states, any enemies you hit with special moves while shifted are instantly killed. And if you click in both sticks again, you'll do a screen clear that wipes out all of the surrounding enemies. Think of it as the love child between Ripper mode from Metal Gear Rising and the Blood and Steel mechanic from Razor's Edge. If you clear a fight and still have some secondary meter, it'll run out until you reach the next fight and build up again. There's a lot of toys for Yakumo and Ryu to play with, but the weirdest call that Platinum made for this game was splitting ownership of the weapons and Ninpo between these two. I see what they're going for. Yakumo is the entry point for people new to the series, so he gets the weapons to demonstrate the normal and Bloodraven movesets. And because Ryu is wielding what is canonically the strongest weapon in the setting, he shouldn't need any other weapons besides his trusty dragon sword. But to make sure there's parity in the control scheme with Yakumo, he gets to switch out his Ninpo for whatever the situation requires. Whereas Yakumo's weapons are an extension of his moveset, Ryu's Ninpo are temporary power-ups that spend meter that he would otherwise use for Gleam. Brief aside, I love how Ryu's mode shift is tapping into the power of the Dragon Sword. It's a nice continuity nod to his late game upgrade in past entries, and it doesn't tarnish his character, which could have been done by his bloodline ties to the Fiends, or the residual side effect of the curse he endured in NG3. It just sucks that Gleam is functionally a palette swap of Bloodraven, and not even a complete one, as Ryu doesn't have a Gleam equivalent to Yakumo's jump and mobility actions. I know that Yakumo and Ryu are getting extra weapons in the DLC, but if you're going to give anything back to Ryu, give him back his bow. Make that the Gleam version of his shurikens instead of Ninpo, let that be strong attack and shuriken again like in past games, but give him a range attack for airborne enemies so you don't have to rely on having enough meter for Ninpo or enough bodies to throw at the Kiteman. My only other issue with Ninja Gaiden 4 is that initially, I assumed it was going to be Metal Gear Rising 2 spiritually. Instead, it's actually Devil May Cry 4-2. Like, if Nero had Dante's style switching, and Virgil took over Dante's missions, that's this game. It's actually crazy how many parallels I can draw between this game and DMC 4 and 5. Both playable characters have their own respective shops they use to purchase gear. There's a character in both games that you think is on your side, but the signal that they're about to betray you is them dropping their cane. A paramilitary group that dresses in white is led by a captain that becomes a rival fight for the hot-headed new guy. The hot-headed new guy has to prove to the seasoned veteran that they're worthy to wield a weapon that's long been associated with villains in their respective series. The penultimate boss fight is a giant pain in the ass that requires you to jump across multiple platforms while avoiding their attacks. And the guy who can switch out his fighting style in 4 different ways gets a 5th style by double tapping the same input on the D-pad. And the annoying part about all this is that the game isn't even good at imitating DMC4 where it matters. Kakashi looks cool as far as rival characters go, but there's no build up to his rivalry with Yakumo. You fight him, listen to Victor Borba sing his boss track, and then move on.
Guy just came from hell. He's gotta hit up a couple tourist sites.
Jest so lightly in a time of crisis?
That's a look you shoot your enemy.
I don't recognize you or your uniform, but if you're here to take Sayori away, think again. End of the line.
Kakashi.
Do you realize what you've done? The city's a damn wreck because of you. But there's no one to blame but myself. I should have killed you the first time we met. I know Sayori's with you. I'll give you one last chance. Stop this madness. Stay away from the Dark Dragon Seal. No turning back now, runt.
Misaki doesn't matter until he does, and then he doesn't again. Ryu and Yakumo are different flavors of stoic, but there's not enough going on between them to differentiate from each other, as opposed to Dante's and Nero's dynamic in 4 and 5. Even in the absence of this mimicry, NG4's plot falters because it feels like all the interesting parts of the narrative happen off-screen. Who founded the DDO? How did Ryu come to end up working with them? Why do we refer to Ryu's clan with the Japanese word for falcon, but we refer to Yakumo's clan with the English word for raven? Why does Ryu look like he killed a Bionicle and is now wearing its husk? I actually don't mind all the greebling on his suit now, but why is he wearing that same suit in the flashback sequences? It would have been cooler if he wore one of his classic latex suits from past games in those chapters. But then Koei Tecmo wouldn't be able to nickel and dime us with cosmetic DLC. Oh yeah, all of Ryu's chapters in the campaign are set before Yakumo's chapters, and, just like Dante and DMC4, their previously visited areas played backwards, and even reuse the same boss fights. I know I sound like I hate Ninja Gaiden 4, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. I'm just annoyed at how so much of the conversation about the game stalled over whether we should consider it a proper Ninja Gaiden entry, because look at the number at the end of the title. And because that topic sucks so much air out of the convo, I have yet to hear anyone else talk about other aspects besides the combat. Like, straight up, this game gives you the worst first impression with its aggressive tutorialing and over-reliance on yellow paint signposting. Put a few hours into the older NG titles, and you'll see their approach to providing guidance to new players is non-invasive and gives you the option to read notes, instead of killing the game's momentum to explain what happens when you press X and Y. As for the yellow paint, it's a meme at this point, but that doesn't mean we should let that shit pass when it's done badly.
Must be another way in.
I've defended the RE4 remix use of it because it was handy there when I was getting overwhelmed by a specific set piece. Again, play the older NG games and you'll see that they didn't have to rely on a splash of color sticking out like a sore thumb in the environment to indicate whether you could wall run on a surface. And to NG4's credit, later levels do a better job making use of the yellow color motif with foliage or other environmental assets. Having said all this, I'm not saying we should stop picking apart the combat and just be content with what we got. Yes, the soft lock in the game is aggressive. Yes, past games also had lock-on issues. And yes, NG4's lock-on is more pronounced than past games. But speaking as an action game casual, we're starting to sound like Sonic fans. Here, let me try. Ugh, I hate what they did with Ryu's arms. What if they were blue instead? I'm a ride or die for Platinum. Even in the wake of Kamiya's departure, even after shelling out money for 2 Black and realizing it's Sigma 2 but bloated up to 90 gigs because of Unreal 5 garbage, despite all this, I'm always glad to see Platinum putting work out, even if it's fluff like the Guy Savage bit in Delta. I'm glad there are still people in the team that want to make action games. I just wish they had the freedom to do their own thing and didn't have to glom onto another action series and take on the baggage associated with it. I would love another Astral Chain, if only so they could unfuck the plot they painted themselves into. I would love for Platinum to have a franchise they could call their own that wasn't tied down to Nintendo, Square, or Sega. I like Ninja Gaiden 4, but to me, it's like hearing a ska cover of a song I grew up with. I got my favorite ska bands, but fuck me if I have to hear the Holophonics cover Linkin Park's Numb.